I appear on Fox a lot, to just be honest, because contributors get paid. I don't want to be paid. I appear whenever I can.
Okay. What kind of Republican doesn't want to get paid? Okay. Anyway, you're here to set me straight.
Okay.
So I just want to give you the floor. Have at it. What do I need to be corrected on?
Okay, so first of all, I want to ask you a couple questions. Okay.
Let's do
now,
it.
I understand that you're a Bernie Sanders supporter.
Correct.
Okay. Now, when we talk about the economy, right, a lot of people, and I want, because you've got a phenomenal company here, you got a lot of viewers, but I want people to understand correctly, all right? So where does money come from?
Trees.
Okay.
So that's what liberals think, right?
No, but seriously,
Yeah.
where does it
Well,
come
it's
from?
printed at the Federal Reserve, which is questionable as to whether we should do that. But and then they do quantitative easing, and they do way too many rounds of them, and then it gets into the economy. But in terms of how a person makes it, you work, and
Okay.
then you
And you
get
work
a
and then-
salary,
right.
And then you have some degree of wealth, and you get income from that wealth as well. Those are two large ways of how you make
Perfect.
money.
So the way the economy works, the only source of revenue that we have is tax revenue. Okay? It's the only way that we get money is from taxes. And taxes come in a lot of different ways. 44% of the revenue that comes in, I don't want to bore you, comes from jobs. Okay? So taxes come from jobs, and then there's sales taxes and other taxes. But to get the economy going, that engine, in order for us to be able to pay for things, we have to create a strong economy. And you have to get rid of barriers to do that. Now, Bernie Sanders, I like the man, okay? He seems like a nice guy, all right? But when it comes to policies, in order to pay for the things that a lot of people, Bernie Sanders supporters want, Hillary Clinton supporters want, come from what? Tax revenue. Well, you have to have jobs. You have to have an economy that can create those jobs. You said a second ago about quantitative easing. That money never makes it into the economy. All they do is buy bad debt off the books of banks and moves it to the Federal Reserve.
That part is 100% true and deeply concerning, and we probably agree a lot on that. But now let's talk about the things that you mentioned, the core of your argument. So number one, here Trump says, let's make America great again. That's the theme of his campaign. So let me ask you, and it's going to relate back in a second. When was America great?
Well,
Like 1950s, 60s, where we were number one in the world? You know,
I got to tell you, I think everyone can define great differently. My best year of my life, I was 15. I was thin, I had great hair, and to me, America was great when I was 15.
Right.
But
a lot of people say the glory days of the 50s,
50s and 60s.
Right. So, Ed, the top marginal tax rate in that time ranged from 70% to 91%.
Yeah,
So-
but nobody ever paid that.
Okay, no, the top did. So it didn't apply.
Very
to,
rare.
It didn't apply to the great majority of Americans, which is the same now. The top marginal tax rate does not apply to the great majority of Americans. But the top marginal tax rate was incredibly high, and yes, the Rockefellers, et cetera, did pay that. So that's a part of history. And if you want, and people at home can Google it, et cetera,
Yeah.
and to see who's right about that. So my point is, no, actually what winds up happening, and some of the top Nobel Prize winning economists talk about this,
Which ones?
So Joseph Stiglitz won two different Nobel Prizes, one individually, one as part of a team. And what they say is that the reason, and it's counterintuitive, because if you say to me, do I want a 90% tax rate? I go, no. My family used to be Republican. Part of the reason we sort of supported Reagan was 70% tax rate seemed way too high for us. But in reality, what winds up happening is that if you give the money to the middle class, they spend it. It circulates back into the economy. Whereas if you give it to the top end of the tax bracket, they largely save it. So only 5%.
Where is that statistic coming from?
So these are all based on studies.
No.
People can Google it.
But people say that, and then they'll believe you. But you can't. First of all, you already said that 70% tax bracket, and a lot of people paid it. I don't know one person, and this is what I've done for 30 years. Okay, there was very little revenue that ever came in that was ever taxed at 70%. Didn't happen. They might have had.
Now I would ask you where you get that information from,
because I've actually studied it.
No, but the tax rate was 70%. Are you just saying everybody cheated?
No one ever paid. Nobody ever made the level that was paying that 70%. There were a lot of write-offs. There was a lot of deductions. And if you go and look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS. What is it, Gov? All right, you can go and look and see how much revenue was pulled in during those times. But the idea that taxing wealthy people is somehow going to create a strong economy that's like saying, I want to go stuff my face at the cafeteria
No, but it's
to
not.
lose weight.
Here's why it seems counterintuitive, but there's a lot of logic in it. Now, I'm a small business owner. My dad was a small business owner. So if taxes are really high, what do you want to do? I have an incentive to reinvest it in my company, because I don't want to pay the taxes, so I don't want to take home a lot of profit. If I take home the profit, I'm largely going to save it. It's not going to get recirculated into the economy. But if I want to grow my business, good, because then I don't have to pay the taxes on it. I put it back into my business. Yeah. I hire more people, and the economy grows.
More money in people's pockets. So first of all, the country was built on our ability to make those decisions on our own, and you would agree with that. That's how you built this wonderful business you have today. And you've made the decisions because it's your money, and you've decided where it's going to go. And when I look at any small business owner, and I'm a small business owner as well, I want to be able to make those decisions on my own without being taxed and having money go into the government, and then who knows where it actually goes to. I almost said hell. I don't know if I can on the show.
Yeah, you can say anything you want.
Can. Okay,
yeah.
I have no idea.
But might like go to the Iraq War.
But I want to go back to something, because I want people to understand something, because there is something. It's not a Republican or Democrat thing. And actually, in 1983, the Republicans changed the way we calculated the cost of living increase, or we know the CPI. Yeah. So follow this for 1 minute. Since before 1983, we measured 1,700 different items. Month after month after month, we followed those items, and the increase got us to a point where in 1983, the CPI, cost of living, was up 12%. Under Newt Gingrich, they changed it. They started manipulating how they calculated this, and it went from 12 down to 3 in 1 year. Okay? Now, people in the private sectors, their salary increases. What does an employer do? The employer says, the CPI went up 3, I'm going to give you 4. But you know what their real cost of living income increase is? About 10, 11%. The government lies to us all the time because they want to have more money left in the government. So in 93, 94, in the Butowski Commission, they did it again. And now there's this separation, and people, especially your listeners or viewers, what are they doing? They're saying, yeah, the rich are keeping this money, and the 1% in this country, as we know, you've heard the stats, pay about 70% of the federal income tax that goes in. We all know that. It's a fact, okay? And the top 10% pay 70% of it.
Yeah, I was going to say. Wait.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm always going to be, as precise and exact as I can. So, but the issue isn't that government is going to create jobs. People, go ahead.
And let me jump in first.
Yeah.
With the CPI, actually, you're onto something really interesting. But one of the reasons that winds up actually not that the government keeps more money, but that the government then does not give it in Social Security to the people who need it the most. And the reality is what they're doing is spending it through crony capitalism in billions of dollars, in total, in trillions of dollars in subsidies to the largest corporations in the world.
Well, so which ones?
So, for example,
you're going to say the oil companies. That's where you're going to go, right?
No, but it's not just the oil companies. It's the farm subsidies. We can't negotiate drug prices with the drug companies.
I agree. So
this is not free market.
No.
This is outrageous.
And I thought it was unbelievable when I went through North Dakota once. I don't know if you've ever been there. And they wouldn't cut the corn because they wanted to have it big, and people got paid not to either grow, and others got paid not to cut because of the wind, and because there was too much, so they were controlling it that way. I agree with that, but that money is minuscule compared to the overall economy. The only way we fix this economy, and it's definitely minuscule. The breaks that you give, all right, you're saying you're giving breaks, but that's how oil and gas companies are, okay?
No, that's not how they are. They're the most profitable companies in the world. They certainly don't need my money in the form of subsidies.
Right, but that's
outrageous.
But competition,
that's robbing me.
As I tell my son, competition yields better results, better products, and lower prices.
Fantastic. Let them compete. Why do I need to give them a subsidy? That's the most anti-free market idea there is.
You know what? I'm not going to defend the oil companies because I don't really care, okay? I mean, I really don't. And they do make a lot of money, but you know what? They play by the rules, and if the rules are there, they play by the rules.
But Ed, that's exactly what I'm talking about. They rig the rules by buying our politicians. You're worried about government corruption. I'm also worried about it. But what I'm asking you to look at is who's corrupting them. So there's this view that conservatives have of liberals that we want the government to grow big. For what reason? What gain do we have out of it? The people who want the government to be that powerful are the ones who are redirecting the government money to themselves, which is in the form of those subsidies, in the form of tax breaks. And I'll give you a macro point to prove my point.
Okay, because I'm a specific guy, so those are good talking points. But if we got specific, if we had enough time, and I'm sure I'm going to be invited back on, I would love to know exactly which ones, because some of that does happen.
Yeah. So now, on a case-by-case basis, I've done dozens of videos of where those subsidies go. We talked about some
I'd love
of
to see
them.
'em.
But now, let me give you the overall picture. Back in mid-1950s, corporate taxes contributed to about 33%, 33 to 35% of all taxes that Americans paid. Now, that is down to 10% of all taxes that go into the...
It was 17.
No, I just saw a chart on it, and
Okay.
we did it.
So,
done it. It's
I'll
not-
show you
so
my
it's-
chart. You show me your
All
chart.
right, that's fair enough.
All right.
But mine is at about 9.7%, so right around 10%. Whereas the payroll tax, which used to be around 10% of all taxes paid, payroll tax paid by everybody, up to about 120 some odd $1,000. So
Okay.
now it does not affect the rich. If you make more than that, or it affects them only for that first 120,000. Okay.
Okay, but let me
Roughly.
ask you a question. Are you saying the rate that they pay or the amount of money, revenue into the country?
Amount of revenue is a percentage of all overall
There you
taxes.
go. And you know why it's lower? Because we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world.
No, but that's not true. No, what?
Oh.
No. You have to talk about effective tax rate, because then we get into the argument you were making originally. The corporations don't actually pay that. Their tax rate might be 35%, but their effective tax rate is way lower than that, and way lower than most Western nations, most developed nations. We're near the bottom in effective tax rate for corporations, because they have rigged the rules in their favor. That's why they only pay.
They're not rigging the rules. You're making everything sound like a conspiracy.
But no, it's not. It's a conspiracy that's in the open. That we now allow the corporations to give unlimited money to politicians, and if somebody gives you $1 million,
all right.
will you do
You're
what they
jumping around.
want?
You know
yes,
what? All right.
yes, you
know
will.
what? You're jumping around. This is
I'm
what
not
I don't
jumping
want.
around. It
Because
is a logical conclusion
but now all of a sudden
that
we're
if corporations give money to politicians, politicians are the ones that set the rules. They set the rules in favor of the guy who gave them $1 million, and the rules are then changed so that the corporations can pay less taxes, and me and you have to pay more in payroll taxes.
So I'm not
they
doubting
shifted
that there
the
is
tax
some
burden from them onto us. So that is how it was literally rigged. It's not a conspiracy
All right,
in
well, you
a
saying
smoke-filled room. It's right in front of
Okay.
us.
So you're saying rigged. There are rules, and I will say, when people give money, and I've been around this game a long time, and I know money is given to certain people, and it's never really talked about. You've seen it, I know it, I feel it, and I understand that. But the rules are, whatever these rules are, in front of us, people, they play by those rules, or they go to jail, or they get in big trouble. The effective tax rate for companies, you have to tell me what that is, because each company pays a different number. General Electric paid 3%. I think Google or Facebook paid. I think it was Facebook paid hardly anything.
Apple
okay?
paid 0%.
Right. I mean, so I get that, and that's a big number. Okay, but the money that's there isn't necessarily going back into those districts and so on. A lot of it's going to other places, and you
I'll
and
tell
I
you
agree.
where it's going. It's going to executives. So
Well, that's silly.
No, it's
I mean,
not
I
silly,
manage
it's a
money
fact.
for executives.
No,
I manage money the wealth for very rich people,
Ed.
and the executives aren't getting money from. That's
Ed,
silly.
No, it's not silly. It's a fact. So let me explain.
Oh, it's a fact.
No, now, what politicians do is they allow for loopholes like the Dutch sandwich and there's an Irish loophole.
The duck sandwich and an.
No, there is. You don't know
There's
that?
a duck sandwich.
Dutch.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Dutch.
Well, still,
okay.
even the Dutch sandwich.
Okay.
A Dutch duck.
But that's why it's so absurd. They name these absurd loopholes, and Apple uses this. A lot of companies use this. So they go to Ireland and they go to Netherlands.
Those are
And
offshore accounts.
So they do loopholes. So that's part of why they pay 0%. And then when they pay 0%, they have extra billions of dollars. Then they turn around and obviously give some of that to their shareholders. Then to say to the shareholders, look at all this extra money I got you. Shareholders go, great. Tim Cook, who's a good guy, and I like Apple's products, goes, hey, shouldn't I get more money? They're like, you're right. You should get hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, that doesn't come from
He just
that.
took home the money that should have been the American taxpayers.
First of
Because
all,
then otherwise we can't run the government. We
Look.
can't have a military. We can't have bridges. We can't have roads. Because Apple decided they were going to, and I'm not throwing Apple under the bus. All the corporations do this.
Okay.
They decided, I want more executive pay. I'm going to pay off those
not
corrupt politicians.
How many
and
corporate
I'm
board
gonna get
meetings
more.
have you been into for Apple?
For Apple?
None.
Yes,
How many have
but
you
there
been
are
into for
reports
these others?
them,
Of
means
course.
How many,
Look, there's
how
reports
many
on
things
everything.
have you reported on or talked about that you've actually been in? Almost none. We get our news from.
But what you're saying, let me share this. The board of directors, way before on compensation plans, they don't just make that decision on that day. When they have their packages and they sign a new
base
contract,
it on profits.
Of course, that's what makes the world
That's
go round.
right, but you'll have more profits if you don't pay any taxes.
If I'm a shareholder and you can find a way to make my company more profitable, okay, guess what? That's the game. You're playing
That's
football.
right.
What's your favorite sport?
Football.
Okay. You want your team to score as many points, all right? You're judging them based on how many games they win. Because let me finish. You got to finish.
Yep.
the game is about winning the football game legally and playing by the rules. These are the rules. You want to change the rules? Change the rules. But
that's exactly what I intend to
so
do.
Tim Cook,
Because
Tim Cook did that year.
He did.
No,
So
his
let me
contract
explain.
was written 3 years before
No,
that.
so let me explain that.
Okay.
So overall, multinational corporations, and this is written in the Powell memo in 1971. They said, hey, why aren't we doing X, Y, and Z? He laid it out. So it's not to say that it's a conspiracy. It's logical. If I was a corporation, I'd do the same thing.
Right.
They said, hey, why don't we buy the ref? In your football analogy, we just go and say, let's change the rules and say we can pay the ref. And ref, I'll pay you $10,000, but if you do the calls on my way, I'll pay you $1 million. The ref is the government. So what they did was they said unlimited corporate contributions are now legal. So the corporations were allowed to give money to politicians when before they could not. And that started in 1976 and 1978. Okay. So after that, all of a sudden the refs are getting paid by the corporations, and they go, "You're right. You should get a Dutch sandwich. You should get any loophole you want." So whoops! So look at that. You're paying 0% taxes.
You're talking about offshore accounts, and that's why Mitt Romney, by the way, you want to know why Mitt Romney had offshore accounts? I'll make it very quick. Everyone had this wrong. What he did with private equity is in order to keep something called keep your the tax deduction, and the name will come to me in a second, but in order to keep your pension plan. So if you invested, you had a pension plan, and you wanted to put money in private equity, where Mitt Romney's private equity yielded you 60% a year for a number of years, you had to have an offshore account, otherwise you would have lost your tax deduction in the pension. When Mitt Romney got paid, he got paid on an offshore account. That's why he had offshore accounts. Okay?
So the reason you have offshore accounts is because the politicians allowed them to have it. If you were a patriot, you would say, no, you keep your accounts and your business right here in the United States of America.
Okay, now go back to your football analogy. You know what? You can throw a touchdown pass, but I'd rather you not. Just hand it off to the running back.
No. That's saying when I throw a touchdown, I'm going to get 48 points. When you throw a touchdown, you're going to get 2 points. Because they're fixing the rules, Ed. They're doing it by buying our politicians. As a conservative, you should agree with me. It's crony capitalism. They're destroying the free market. What is a
destroying the free market?
Yes,
and here you're a Bernie Sanders supporter?
Yes.
You need therapy.
No, Ed.
Because you're telling me you're destroying
Ed,
free
that's what I'm trying to get you to understand. That Bernie Sanders supporters actually appreciate the free market. They want to go back to the free market.
Right.
They're not
and that's
trying
what we
to get
have. But I do agree with you.
Handout.
Look, there are a lot of, and I know we're going to have to end here in a second, but there are a lot of what you're saying. Don't disagree. But we got to get specific, because these broad-based terms don't work.
Well,
okay?
That's why I'm telling you about specific
So you know what? Let's do
this.
Let's go back to our homework. Come back with your ducks or whatever they are.
You guys have Duck Dynasty. We have Duck Sandwich. Actually, yes. I don't want the Duck Sandwich. I don't want.
And I
the
just saw the
Irish.
Duck Dynasty guy. I've never seen an episode. But thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Ed.
All right.
Ed Butowski, Republican surrogate. We appreciate you coming on the Young Turks.
Thank you.